This week on Cruisin', we're at Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens in Akron, Ohio. This Barracuda has had a rough beginning.
The interior had blue shag indoor carpeting on it. The metal dashboard had vinyl glued over it.
His inspiration?
I grew up appreciating the SCCA racing competition of the mid-60s.
And it shows. Hey, that car looks familiar.
That was used in the original movie, A Christmas Story.
Classic cars can be found in the most unique places.
So it was in a basement in Steubenville, Ohio.
Our first basement find.
And we used to street race it in Cleveland for beer and gas money, and we ate well and we had a lot of gas.
I can see why. That's a stunning Pontiac 2+2.
National CCA award winner and an AACA award winner first place. And it's been on Pebble Beach. It's been shown in Pebble Beach in the 60s with this restoration.
A restoration that's held up quite well. Cruisin' from Stan Hywet starts right now. Hi everybody, welcome to Cruisin'. I'm Scott Miller and we're at Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens in Akron, Ohio. It's Father's Day and that means it's the 58th Classic, Antique, and Collectible Car Show. There's a lot to see and do, so let's get at it. How'd you come about the car? What drew you to the car? Were you always looking for one of these? And is it the way it is today is the day you got it?
It's not the way I got it when I purchased it originally. I did get it from a classic car dealership when I did live in New York, but it needed a lot of work. The interior had blue shag indoor carpeting on it. The metal dashboard had vinyl glued over it. It had a handmade console put into it and a towing package onto it. The electrical system needed to be gone through, brakes. So I did a lot to make it look more original in stock, redoing the interior on it, repairing the electrical system, going through the brakes on it to make it a reliable driver.
So you don't have a lot of original, but are you trying to keep it a little kind of like a rest-a-mod kind of car?
Similar to that, I grew up appreciating the SCCA racing competition of the mid-60s, and there was real heated competition between the Fords with the Mustangs and the Barracudas, and it was really close in competition. The Mustangs just beat them out in competition in '66 for it. And the Hearst Hemi under glass and all the racing that's tied to this car.
So when it came to choosing paint and the overall look of the car, you went with the solid paint with the single cap on there and the rally stripe down the middle. Did you have a reference point? Did you go back to old books and say, that's what I want it to look like?
Yeah, the striping on this is factory striping for the Formula S for that year. And the team that was racing it, was Scott Harvey, and even Richard Petty raced these in SCCA competition too. They had the blue cars. This is a little darker blue than the blue that they were running, but this is the look.
Rich, do you want to race it?
I have. I occasionally take it out to the drags, and it's ran a best 13 1/4 at 108.
And you've increased the brake capacity. I mean, kind of bring it a little more up to date as far as the safety features.
It still has the stock drums, but they're the larger drums that they had that year.
I'd be scared going down a drag strip with drums though, because
Yeah,
you gotta slow them down eventually.
Oh, you got a downshift.
A lot. Rich, I appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Don, some guys aren't content with leaving well enough alone. They gotta tinker with things, they gotta change them. You're a guy that likes his stuff original. Tell us about your 36 L38.
I picked up the car about 5 years ago. I'm a history buff. I'm very interested in old cars and all types of old history. And I was excited to find it because it's an all original car. And what's interesting about this car is this car was the same car that was used in the original movie, A Christmas Story. So when people see it, they can relate to the fact that some of these cars still exist.
You say you got the car about 5 years ago?
Correct.
Is it something that you kind of had on your wish list as far as?
Yeah, I have a lot of cars on my wish list, and this particular one happened to come up, you know,
Yeah.
so, you know.
And you were attracted to it because of the fact that it's still original?
Still original, and I like the look, and you know.
This was kind of like a working man's car?
It was a working man's car. It originally sold for $910 in 1936.
As you would see it today, because as you see it as it's original today.
Correct.
For as long as you've had the car, tell us how it feels when you're behind the wheel.
Oh, it feels
How's
great.
it go down the road?
Runs good, feels good. People like the car. Of course, you don't see too many of them around anymore. And it's a lot of fun to drive. It makes you feel like you were back in the 30s when you drive it, you know.
You ever dress era specific when you're behind the wheel?
I think you do. I think you do. I think you feel era specific, you know.
Have you had to do anything to it since you got it? I mean, where does one get the base knowledge to know how to work on, you know, a straight 8?
Well, you can get, I have the original manual for the car, believe it or not. And I've got some good mechanics that work with me who are familiar with these types of cars. They haven't changed much. I mean, it's still a basic engine, everything basic, carburetor and so on and so forth. So, and you can buy the parts. I mean, you know where to go, you can find parts for them.
So what's the future of the car?
It'll stay in my family until I'm gone.
And it'll stay the same?
Stay the same. You know, a lot of guys buy these kind of cars, they chop them down and do hot rodding and that, which is fine, but I don't do that. I keep them all original.
It could double as a luxury car.
Correct.
The suicide doors, big back seat, it could be a chauffeur kind of car. It could be a gangster car.
Yeah, correct.
You know, it goes across the board, but the fact that it's intact and looks the way that it does and it's all original, that's what makes it unique. Don, thanks for being on the show.
You're certainly welcome. Thank you.
Coming up.
This car will track straight at 80 miles an hour, 40 miles to a gallon.
An MPG way ahead of its time. That's next on Cruisin'. Now back to Stan Hywet Hall & Garden's Father's Day Car Show on Cruisin'. Dan, I've heard of a barn find, but really a basement find?
Yes, it was in a basement in Steubenville, Ohio.
A basement in Steubenville, Ohio. How'd you come about the car and how'd you get it to where it is today?
My mechanic, a friend of mine, he was actually lived in Steubenville, and he knew the guy. The guy's 90 years old.
Okay.
And he wasn't going to finish the car. And so he told me about it. We went down and got it and took it back to Kent, Ohio.
So in order to actually have a car in the basement, you have to really have it in parts or in at least some level of transition.
Actually, it was running.
It was running in the basement?
It was running. We drove it back. We didn't trailer it.
And from that point, I mean, it still needed a lot of work. This is everything matching Porsche.
It's matching number car, yes.
And what have you done to it?
Basically, body work, interior, rebuilt the motor. Motor, you know, it was 70-some thousand miles on it. It needed rebuilt. That's basically it. The underside was the guy had the underside almost done himself. There's floor pans and stuff. Now you can get everything aftermarket, but back in '64 when he started this, he built a template, a box of sand, and pounded them out, and they're still on this car now.
Now, there's no frame on this car.
No.
Tell us about that type of engineering.
Well, this is one of the original unibodies. These are Porsche was 1956. American, what, 70s? We come out with the unibody. This back in '56 unibody car.
How's it perform in corners? How does it do what it's supposed to do?
Excellent. This car will track straight at 80 miles an hour, 40 miles to a gallon. Runs handles. I just had on a Teller Dragon, Smoky Mountains, North Carolina, 319 turns and 11 miles. This car is made for that.
Porsche or Porsche?
Porsche.
Thank
Two-syllable.
you very much. I'd say if you're part of one of 626, that's pretty exclusive in the car world. Tell us about your fantastic, beautiful 1964 300K convertible.
Chrysler 300K, The K indicates that it is the performance car of Chrysler for that year. Chrysler started producing letter cars in 1955. It was a C300. They went up to 65 with the 300L. This car was originally owned by a Chrysler dealer in Columbus, Ohio. I've had it for 13 years. I bought it from an individual in Hudson, Ohio. It was a pretty solid car, pretty nice condition, but still needed work done on it.
What type of work did you do to the car?
A little bit of body work, but mostly paint work. I'm not that much of a painter, but I do pretty well mechanical. But I even had the engine rebuilt on this. Everything has been rebuilt on it, which could possibly be rebuilt in order to make it perform like new.
How many miles have you put on the car since you got it and you got it to the place where it is now?
Oh, I may have put about, I'll say 20,000 miles, because 4 years ago I drove this to California for 300 meet out there. And we had a fantastic time on our trip out and back.
How many are still out there that you know of?
Well, I probably, with convertible-wise, I probably only remember about 4 or 5 myself. And I saw quite a bit at Chrysler Carlisle Nationals.
Do you get a lot of offers for the car?
Yes, people approach me quite often about it, but I tell them it isn't for sale. I have it until I die.
Wonderful car, Jim. Thank you very much for being on Cruisin'.
Thank you.
Well, so far so good. It's been more than just dads. It's been great cars, and there's more coming up on Cruisin'. Welcome back to Cruisin'. But I have never seen more people walk past a car and give a compliment in the tone that they just can't believe how immaculate this car is. Tell us about your 65 2+2.
Well, I've always been a Pontiac guy, and when I was growing up, my brother had a white and black one, and we used to street race it in Cleveland for beer and gas money, and we ate well and we had a lot of gas. So I lost my brother probably about 8 years ago, and he wrecked that car years back, and we took all of the pieces off the car that we could salvage, and they were at his house. And when he passed, I inherited all this stuff, and I decided that I wanted to do my own 2+2, and I wanted it optioned out like the car that we had optioned out as kids from the dealership with our dealership brochure, that we circled the options that we wanted on that brochure. So I left that on the workbench while we did the car, and a good friend of mine, Tim Skarupa at American Vintage, was kind enough to start the project for me and see it to completion. You know, it was a lot of looking, a lot of hunting, the parts, the options. This car was a low option car initially, and now it's got every option you could get in 65.
So you literally, I mean, when you were younger, you would go to the Pontiac dealer, you'd get the brochures, you and your brother, you'd circle how you would want to build a 2+2.
Exactly.
And then when you go to do it again, you had that as a reference point. Did you want to kick yourself a little bit because, wow, I really wanted way too much?
Not really, no. It was, I knew that the parts were obtainable. I just knew it would be a long hunt for the stuff, but I just figured it would be a neat tribute to him because like the tri-power on this car and the rear speaker and the rear seat and some of the smaller parts in the interior and stuff are stuff from his original car that I just felt that I needed to use on this while I was doing it. You know, it's like, I like the car. We bought it, and my wife and I drove it around for the first year and decided that we really enjoyed the car and we really liked it. And when she gave me her nod of approval, that was like, okay, well now I can do what I want to do. And she asked me why I would buy a black on black car with no air conditioning. And I just looked at her, I says, honey, 421 tri-power, positive traction, 4-speed. you know, and she says, can you put air in it? And I was like, yeah, you know. So that kind of gave me the green light to do all that we've done to this car.
Where did this one come from, and you know, was it a difficult process?
Well, actually it was. There was a car locally that, it was a Catalina that I was going to try to clone into a 2+2 because I had a lot of the specific parts from my brother's car. But the guy wasn't selling the car. So I kind of looked everywhere I could until I met some fellas at one of the shows, and they suggested trying eBay. Well, I, being computer illiterate, knew nothing about eBay. And so then I you know, fired up eBay and started looking, and that's when I found some other cars that I had looked at, but they weren't exactly what I was looking for, and they weren't 4-speed cars. And I found this car in Baltimore, Maryland, and I contacted the gentleman, and we kind of made a gentleman's agreement on the phone with the car, being that the auction was ending and my wife and I were supposed to be on vacation.
Yeah.
And my wife knew that I was chomping at the bit to get this thing, so she elected to end our vacation a couple of days early so we could come home and I could fly to Baltimore and get it. So obviously my wife is a true gearhead.
Yeah, she's getting points as we continue to talk.
Yeah, so we drove the car home. I was a little nervous, but I drove just fine. And like I said, we drove it for that first year and decided that yes, this is a car that was worthy of complete restoration. And that's when it was, you know, the funny part was it was just going to be a nice, clean driver. Mm-hmm. And obviously it went a little over the top, but I find it a really neat car because most people have never seen one. And it's not a GTO, which everybody's seen, and it's just unique and it's different. And for me and my wife, it brings back a time in our lives when everything was fun and cool. And you know, that's when we enjoyed it. And so every time we get in this thing, it's kind of like we go back in time, and I'm sure for a lot of people that have cars like this, it's the same thing, you know. But she's okay with all of it, and that's any guy's, I mean, that's key. Yeah. I mean, if she's not on board, then none of this would happen. We have other cars at home, and she says, this one will never leave. So, you know, I figured they just bury me in this one, if she'll allow it.
Coming up on Cruise In.
Except for its first 5 or 6 years, it was in Pennsylvania, and then went out to California and stayed there.
After 8 decades away, this beautiful Packard comes home. Next. Welcome back to Stan Hywet Hall & Garden's Father's Day Car Show on Cruise In. Well, the phrase goes, ask a man who owns one, so we're here to ask the man who owns one. A 1927 Packard. Carl Hummel, thanks for being on Cruise In with us.
You're welcome.
You guys haven't known each other very long.
No, I've known this car for several years. I just purchased it 2 months ago from California.
So this is a California car?
This is a California car.
All of its entire life?
Except for its first 5 or 6 years, it was in Pennsylvania, and then went out to California and stayed there.
Tell us about the process. I mean, did you eye the 27 Packard, say, I gotta have one, and how's that work?
Actually, I'm a Packard addict. I have from 24 all the way up to 55.
Okay.
And I saw this 27, a friend had it, a friend of a friend had it, and he told me it was for sale, and the numbers worked, and next thing you know, I own this 27 Packard.
Now this 27 Packard has a history of winning some awards.
So it's CCA, National CCA Award winner, and an AACA Award winner first place. And it's been on Pebble Beach. It's been shown in Pebble Beach in the 60s with this restoration.
Well, it's nothing to Stan Hywet Hall & Gardens.
Yes, yeah, it's an honor to be here.
How many original miles on the car?
This has 47,000.
And what's under the hood that makes it go?
It is a straight 8, 356 cubic inch.
And how many miles on it have you put on it?
I've put about 300 on it so far.
And loving every minute of it.
Loving every minute of it.
Well, you rolled in here, you got the rumble seat, you got the kids in the back.
Got the grandkids, got the wife, we're living the dream.
And in true Packard fashion, you also have the Packard stamped steamer trunk on the back.
Correct, and it has fitted luggage in it too also.
It does, seriously.
Fitted luggage, yes.
Tell me the significance of DHW on the front of the
That
radiator.
was the initials name who originally owned it.
And it still has the California plate on it.
Correct, correct. I haven't changed that.
So as a Packard fanatic,
Yes.
are you done?
Never done. Never done.
So what's on your wish list?
You know, it's I see it, I like it, I try to find it.
And this one fit that criteria.
This one
it wasn't.
fit.
Did the color combination matter, or?
That was enticing. Yeah, that was enticing.
Because I mean, it has a unique look to it with the two-tone.
And the chrome, and it's got a lot of chromic Packard accessories, like these lights match these lights, which match these lights. And it's got locks on all the little doors. So it's just a really cool Packard with the chrome nuts.
Everything in line. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Carl, thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
Well, we want to thank the folks here at Stan Hywet Hauling Gardens 58th Annual Father's Day Car Show. We certainly hope that you enjoyed the episode. We're looking forward to coming back next year, and we'll see you next week on Cruise In.